In the flickering candlelight of a forbidden study, a boy's trembling hand etches numbers that no master should see. Not mere figures, but echoes of stolen lives, hidden sins, and blood-soaked prophets. These digits whisper of divine judgment, coiling like serpents in the dark, waiting to strike. For in the eyes of heaven, every theft is tallied, every cry recorded. And when the ledger opens, empires built on chains will crumble to dust. The air hung heavy with the scent of magnolia blossoms and damp earth, a deceptive veil over the rot that festered beneath Riverside Plantation's grand facade. It was 1842, in the sweltering heart of South Carolina, where the sun beat down like the unrelenting gaze of an angry god, scorching the fields where bent backs labored from dawn's first blush to the bruise of dusk. Robert Fairchild, the master of this sprawling domain, believed himself a king in his realm of cotton and control. Tall, with a jaw carved from granite and eyes as cold as polished steel, he strode the verandas of his white-columned mansion like a pharaoh surveying his pyramids. But his true throne was the mahogany study, a sanctum of polished wood and leather-bound secrets, where gas lamps cast long shadows that danced like accusing spirits across the walls. "Numbers don't lie," Fairchild would murmur each evening, his voice a low rumble as he cradled a crystal tumbler of amber brandy, imported from across the seas at a cost that could feed a dozen souls for a year. The silver-tipped pen in his other hand glided over parchment, inscribing fortunes won and lives bartered. To him, numbers were divine order amid chaos, immutable, unfeeling, a fortress against the treacheries of men. They couldn't whisper rebellions in the night, couldn't harbor grudges like the overseers who eyed his wealth with envy, couldn't betray like kin who smiled while plotting inheritances. No, numbers were his faithful servants, tallying the yields of his 500 acres, the output of his 80 enslaved workers, the profits funneled to Charleston merchants. In a world woven from the fragile threads of Southern gentility, where honor was a mask for greed, and justice a whip's cruel kiss, numbers offered purity. Or so he thought. But oh, how the heavens mock the proud. For numbers, in their silent vigil, do more than record, they bear witness. They etch the soul's ledger, drop by inexorable drop, chronicling not just commerce but corruption, the skimmed profits, the falsified yields, the human cargo valued less than livestock. Like the biblical scrolls of judgment, they accumulate sins unseen, building toward a reckoning. And when wielded by one deemed unworthy, a soul forged in chains yet burning with an inner light, they become instruments of divine retribution, toppling thrones built on the bones of the oppressed. This is the tale of Samuel, a name whispered in shadows, though the plantation knew him only as the boy at first, then the accountant, in hushed tones laced with unease. Born into bondage, he was never meant to grasp the forbidden fruit of knowledge, never intended to see beyond the cotton rows that stretched like endless graves under the merciless sky. Yet fate, or providence, placed in his mind a gift sharper than any blade, a mastery of numbers that could unravel empires. Not through fire or flight, but through the quiet power of truth inscribed in ink. Over years of patient vigil, Samuel would transform Fairchild's ledgers from tools of tyranny into scrolls of condemnation, documenting every iniquity until the weight of revelation crushed the guilty. It was a story of redemption's slow burn, where the meek inherited not the earth, but its hidden truths, echoing the parable of the talents turned against the unjust steward. Samuel's arrival at Riverside was no grand procession, but a profane auction under an ancient oak, its branches sagging like the arms of a weary prophet. September 1842, the air thick with the buzz of flies and the murmur of bartered fates. He was 7, a wisp of a child, skin taut over bones from rations that barely sustained life, cornmeal gruel thin to watery despair, scraps of fatback that tasted of defeat. His eyes, wide and dark as midnight wells, drank in the world with a hunger that belied his frailty. Sold from a bankrupt upriver farm, he was part of a lot of 12, herded like cattle across the dusty lawn. The auctioneer's gavel fell with the finality of a judge's sentence, prices haggled in dollars that reduced humanity to arithmetic. Fairchild didn't deign to glance at the boy during the bidding. His focus was on the ledger in his assistant's hands, cribbling over values. "That graybeard won't last the season," he barked, pointing at an elder whose back bore scars like ancient runes. "And these whelps? Dead weight for years." The creditor smirked, a serpent in spectacles, "Then walk away, sir. Plenty more buyers." But Fairchild paid $8,400 for the dozen, averaging $700 a head. Samuel, small and unpromising, fetched perhaps $300 in the mental calculus, an investment as speculative as seed in fallow ground. Little did Fairchild know, he had acquired not chattel, but a nemesis cloaked in innocence, a vessel for justice, as if the Almighty had slipped an avenging angel into the devil's bargain. Assigned to the children's cadre, Samuel toiled in the margins of the plantation's machine. Fetching pails from the well, where water sloshed cold against his blistered palms, stacking cordwood that splintered his fingers like thorns of a crown, scampering with messages across yards baked hard as clay tablets. The sun bore down, a relentless inquisitor, while overseers cracked whips that sang through the air like demonic hymns. Yet amid this drudgery, Samuel's mind was a sanctuary, a hidden temple where numbers reigned supreme. He wasn't merely counting, he was communing with patterns, seeing divine geometry in the chaos. Bushels of corn, sacks of flour, the rhythm of arrivals and departures, all woven into a tapestry only he could read. His mother had glimpsed this gift early, back on the doomed farm. A woman weathered by sorrow, her eyes holding the weight of generations chained, she had cradled him one final night. Before her sail southward. "Hide it, child," she whispered, voice cracking like dry earth underfoot. "Numbers are power, but for us, they're peril. They see you thinking, they'll crush you like they did your kin." Sold for a pittance, $200, noted as one female, approximate 30, field hand, she vanished into George's maw, leaving Samuel with a vow etched in his soul: secrecy as armor. For 2 years, he honored it. In the kitchens, under Martha's watchful eye, the head cook, a matronly figure with hands calloused from stirring pots of survival, he scrubbed until his skin rawed, all while tallying in silence. 23 house workers fed once daily on mush laced with table leavings, 67 field hands twice, bolstered weekly by salted pork that reeked of preservation's false mercy. Supplies rolled in on creaking wagons, flour in burlap sacks dusted white as ghosts, sugar crystals glinting like forbidden jewels. He noted the vanishings 2-3 souls in his first year, an elder claimed by fever's fiery embrace, a youth sold after a leg twisted wrong, a girl who fled into the night, whispers hinting at recapture and harsher bonds southward. Replacements arrived, for that year, prices overheard in overseers' crude banter. But it was the discrepancies that ignited his spirit, the fissures where sin seeped through. When the overseer claimed 32 bushels distributed but Samuel had witnessed only 28, the missing 4 screamed of theft, perhaps bartered for whiskey or favors. Inventory logs padded, 40 sacks arriving, 45 recorded, the phantom 5 lining pockets. Even human transactions twisted, 4 purchased, 3 delivered, the 4th spirited away for illicit gain. These weren't mere errors, they were moral breaches, echoes of the biblical money changers defiling the temple. Samuel saw them as signs from above, portents of judgment gathering like storm clouds. No one suspected, save Martha. Her kitchen was a confessional, steam rising like incense from bubbling cauldrons. "I see you, boy," she said one twilight, as embers glowed red in the hearth. Lips twitching with figures. Dangerous spark in that head. Samuel's pulse raced, but she hushed him. "Ain't telling. But guarded like scripture. Your mama knew smart ones get broken. Why help?" Her eyes misted. "Had a son once, sharp as you. Asked too much, seen too deep. Overseer snitched, master sold him. Gone." In her, Samuel found a guardian, a Mary to his nascent Messiah. Over moons, she taught him letters in ash-drawn sigils, numbers first, then words, bushel, pound, ode. Forbidden knowledge, smuggled like manna in the wilderness. By 9, Samuel wrote to 1,000, calculated on phantom slates in his mind. He grasped the plantation's pulse, all was quantified, from souls to soil, inscribed in Fairchild's ledgers, tomes on shelves, spines gilded like false idols. Cleaning the study, he eyed them with reverence and dread, wondering what revelations lay within. Would they unveil the hypocrisies, the pilfered prosperities? He dared not touch, but his soul yearned, sensing a higher calling, to wield numbers as Moses wielded the staff, parting seas of deception. Spring 1844 brought the pivot, a moment heavy with destiny's weight. Samuel hauled water through the yard, buckets sloshing like baptismal font, when shouts erupted from the study. Fairchild raged at Thomas, the free black accountant from Charleston, educated, precise, paid meagerly to tame the chaos Fairchild loathed. "These don't balance," Fairchild thundered, palm slamming desk, ink leaping like startled sinners. 40 barrels molasses bought, books say 22 left, but 16 in store. Theft. Thomas stammered, pages fluttering like panicked doves. Samuel froze by the window, eavesdropping a sin, yet compelled. His mind whirred, 40 minus distributions, 3 for February's feast, molasses dripping sticky sweet on silver platters for Fairchild's guests, for ration to Fields Inn. March, a rare benevolence masking control. 7 used, 33 should remain. But books claimed 22 left? No discrepancy born of shadow. Late February, Samuel had spied Fairchild's nephew Charles loading barrels under Moon's judgmental eye, 6 perhaps, whisked for private gain. Family theft, not Thomas's error. A betrayal echoing Judas's kiss. The injustice burned, a coal in Samuel's chest. Speak? Risk all for a stranger? Or silence, letting falsehood prevail? At 9, fear won, he slunk away, but the seed of resolve sprouted. Thomas departed in disgrace, shoulders bowed under unfair yoke, cart rattling like chains of conscience. Samuel watched, hardening. Numbers were truth's sword, he would forge it in secrecy. 6 months sans bookkeeper plunged Riverside into disarray. Fairchild wrestled ledgers nightly, brow furrowed like Cain's mark, handwriting devolving to scrawls. Supplies mismatched, payments lagged, buyers queried inflated yields. Eleanor, his wife elegant in silks that whispered of stolen luxuries, pleaded, higher aid, Robert. Pride blinds you. He rebuffed, ego a fortress crumbling. Samuel observed, biting like a prophet in exile. Martha counseled, wait till desperation bites. Show worth beyond measure. Opportunity struck November 1844, chill wind whistling omens. Cleaning the study, Samuel saw Fairchild slump, receipts piled like accusations. Damn these, he cursed, pen clattering. Heart thundering, Samuel spoke, error in column 3, sir. February sales doubled, page 12 and 15. Silence fell, heavy as Judgment Day. Fairchild's gaze pierced, what? Subtract the duplicate, it balances. Pages turned, verification dawned. Fairchild's face shifted, shock, calculation, intrigue. How do you know this, boy? Samuel's knees quaked, but voice held, I see numbers clear, sir. Like patterns in stars. A lie veiled in humility, but the hook set. Fairchild, desperate, tested him with sums, Samuel aced, mind flashing like divine inspiration. Thus began the ascent. Fairchild, seeing profit in anomaly, decreed Samuel's training scandalous, yet pragmatic. Teach him basics, he ordered a reluctant clerk. But Samuel soared, absorbing double entry like scripture, discerning frauds as prophets discern omens. Years blurred, by 12, he assisted covertly, by 15, he shadowed the books, noting sins, overseers skimming tools, Fairchild inflating harvests for loans, kin siphoning funds. He copied secretly, his own ledger hidden in quarters floorboards, a shadow Bible, tallying transgressions. Guilt, sin, retribution themes wove through, each entry a prayer for justice, echoing psalms of vengeance. Cinematic vistas unfolded, moonlight on Samuel's quill, scratching indictments, thunderous storms mirroring inner turmoil, sensory onslaught, ink's acrid bite, papers whisper, brandy's burn in Fairchild's glass. Emotionally, dread built empathy for the oppressed, curiosity at revelations, reflection on soul's cost. By 1860, ledgers brimmed with damnation. Samuel, now the accountant, held the key to collapse. Divine justice loomed, patient as eternity. The study smelled of beeswax polish, aged leather, and the faint, acrid bite of ink left too long in the well. Gaslight flickered from the wall sconces, throwing elongated shadows that stretched across the Persian rug like accusing fingers. Robert Fairchild stood frozen behind his desk, one finger still pressed to the page where Samuel's quiet voice had just unraveled his error. The boy, barely 10, shoulders narrow beneath the coarse linen shirt, kept his eyes fixed on the floorboards, broom still clutched in small, calloused hands. Yet in the silence that followed, something sacred and terrible passed between them. Fairchild's voice, when it came, carried the hush of revelation. You're correct. He said it like a man tasting unfamiliar wine. Then, sharper, how? Samuel swallowed. The air felt thick enough to choke on. I see them, sir. The numbers. They stay with me. Fairchild circled the desk slowly, boots creaking on the oak planks. Each step echoed like the ticking of a celestial clock. He stopped directly before the boy, towering, yet for the first time Samuel sensed the man was the one being measured. "You can read these columns? Add them in your head like that?" "Yes, sir." "Who taught you?" "No one, sir. I just know." The master's eyes narrowed, not with rage, but with the cold arithmetic of a man recalculating the value of everything he owned. A slave who could do what trained clerks in Charleston struggled to manage. A child born in chains who carried the mind of an accountant. The implications were dizzying, dangerous, and delicious. "Prove it." Fairchild thrust the ledger open to a later page, stabbing at two separate totals. Bottom of page 23. Bottom of page 26. Sum them. Samuel didn't need to look. The figures had already burned themselves into his memory hours earlier while dusting the shelves. $7,843, sir. Fairchild checked. Once. Twice. His breath left him in a slow exhale that sounded almost reverent. Exact. He sank into his chair, studying Samuel as though the boy had suddenly sprouted wings. The calculations behind Fairchild's eyes were no longer about columns, they were about risk, reward, and the scandalous possibility that God had delivered salvation in the form of human property. "Can you write?" "Not proper letters, sir. Only numbers, and a few words Martha showed me in the ash." Fairchild leaned forward. "You could learn." "I believe so, sir." Another long silence. The mantel clock ticked like a heartbeat counting down to damnation. Then the question that would bind their fates for 16 years. "Would you like to help me with these books, boy? Learn properly?" Samuel's heart hammered against his ribs. This was the threshold. Step across it, and he would never be invisible again. "Yes, sir," he whispered. "I would like that very much." Fairchild's voice dropped, edged with warning. "This stays between us. You speak of it to no one. Not Martha. Not the quarters. You are still a house servant by day. But each evening, 1 hour, you come here. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Go finish your duties." Samuel walked out of the study on legs that felt borrowed. Outside, the night air carried the scent of wood smoke and distant singing from the quarters, spirituals rising like prayers no master could tax. He had crossed into a new country, one mapped in ink and secrecy. Martha was waiting by the cook fire when he returned. One look at his face and she pulled him into the shadows behind the smokehouse. "You did it," she breathed. "I start tomorrow. He's teaching me to write, to keep the books." She gripped his shoulders, eyes fierce in the fireglow. "Then listen to me like you never listened before. Learn everything. Become indispensable. But never, ever forget you are still property. The moment you become inconvenient, that same man who calls you gifted will sell you. Down river without blinking. You hear me?" "I hear." But even as he said it, something deeper stirred in Samuel. A quiet fire. The same fire that had kept his mother's final warning alive all these years. Numbers didn't just add, they witnessed. And perhaps, in the economy of heaven, the least likely vessel could become the instrument of reckoning. The lessons began the following evening. Fairchild proved a stern but efficient tutor when self-interest aligned with patience. He drilled penmanship first, hours of forming perfect sevens that never curved like nines, fives that never slumped into threes. "A ledger is a sacred thing," he would say, voice low as a preacher's. "Misread it and empires fall." Samuel's hand cramped, but his mind sang. By the end of the second week, his script was cleaner than Fairchild's own. Then came double-entry bookkeeping, the elegant dance where every transaction cast two shadows, debit and credit, forever balancing like scales in the hand of blind justice. Fairchild demonstrated with a cotton sale. Cash increases, debit here. Revenue increases, credit there. They must always equal, or the books cry out that something is wrong.
Samuel understood instantly. The system was beautiful. Almost divine in its demand for truth. Or theft, he murmured before he could stop himself. Fairchild's smile was thin. Or theft. Which is why an honest bookkeeper is worth his weight in gold. The irony settled in Samuel's stomach like lead shot. He was being trained to hide the very sins the system was designed to reveal. By December 1844, Samuel was making entries under supervision. Supply deliveries. Wage tallies for the few free laborers. And always, beneath the surface, he absorbed the deeper arithmetic of bondage itself. One frostbitten evening in January 1845, Fairchild opened the asset ledger and had Samuel copy the valuations. There, in neat columns, were the prices of souls. Adult male field hand, prime, $1,100. Skilled blacksmith, $1,450. Female cook, age 42, $650. Samuel, house servant, age 11, $400. $400. Samuel stared at his own name reduced to a figure. Less than a breeding mule. Less than the grand piano in the parlor. The coldness that had been growing in his chest since Thomas's dismissal crystallized into something harder, something biblical. Like the moment Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego realized the furnace was real. He copied the line without tremor. But that night, in the secret hollow beneath his floorboard, he began the first page of what would become his hidden testament. November 1847, first entry. Official yield recorded, 847 bales. Actual loaded, 809. Difference claimed, 38 bales. False profit entered, $1,710. Master F smiled when investors congratulated him on the harvest. Entry by entry, the secret ledger grew. At first it was only financial discrepancies small cancers Fairchild carved into the books to keep creditors at bay. But Samuel's eye, sharpened by years of silent counting, began recording something more dangerous, the people. When young David was sold south in spring 1849, the official ledger read: one male field hand, age 16, $950. Samuel's private notebook recorded: David, son of Margaret, laundress, and Paul, field driver. Sold to Trader Hammond for $1,100 cash. Family told only after wagon left at dawn. Margaret cried for 3 nights straight. No one comforted her. When old Ruth died Christmas Eve 1849, Fairchild wrote off. One female, approximate 60, asset value $100 removed. Samuel wrote: Ruth, 63 years on this earth, 28 at Riverside. Begged for doctor 3 times. Master said, not worth $5 for a worn-out soul. She died whispering the 23rd Psalm. Buried without marker beside the creaky page after page, name after name. Not valuations, testimonies. Not assets, souls. Samuel wrote them by candle stub, heart pounding at every creak of the quarters, knowing discovery meant the lash, or worse, the auction block. Martha sensed the weight he carried. One night in 1852, as he helped her knead dough for the big house, she whispered: You carrying ghosts now, child? I see them behind your eyes. He told her then. Not everything. But enough. I'm keeping the real books, Martha. The ones that tell what really happened here. She closed her eyes. That's either the bravest or the most foolish thing I ever heard. But if the Lord put that gift in you, maybe He's got a use for it. Just promise me you'll live to see it used. I promise. By 1853, Samuel, now 19, tall and quiet with eyes that missed nothing, had filled 4 hidden ledgers and begun the 5th. Fairchild's dependence had become absolute. The official books were immaculate, the plantation's public face flawless. Investors poured money in. Banks extended credit. No one suspected the rot at the core. But Samuel saw it all. In March 1854, Fairchild reported 1,240 bales to investors. Samuel had counted the wagons himself, 987.
The difference, $11,285 in phantom profit, went straight into Fairchild's Charleston accounts. In June, Fairchild pledged 43 prime workers as collateral for a $22,000 loan. 8 of those workers had already been sold quietly the previous winter. Samuel recorded the names, the buyers, the true prices received. In September, $4,200 arrived earmarked for new gins. Fairchild used it to pay interest on old debts and forged receipts for equipment that never existed. Each fraud Samuel entered in red ink, his own private mark of blood, under sections he titled like chapters from Revelation. False increase. Hidden sales. Phantom collateral. Investor deceit. The fifth ledger was becoming something holy and terrible, an indictment written by the hand of the oppressed, awaiting only the proper hour to be opened. Samuel still had no plan. He was 20 now, still enslaved, still the accountant by day, secret chronicler by night. The weight of complicity pressed on him like millstones. Every false entry he made in the master's books felt like hammering another nail into the cross of truth. Yet each night, when he slid the loose board back into place and blew out the candle, he whispered the same quiet prayer his mother had taught him long ago. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of lies, I will fear no evil, for the numbers are with me. And somewhere, in the architecture of heaven, perhaps the angels kept their own ledger patient, meticulous, and far more accurate than any Fairchild had ever dreamed. The storm was still years away. But the clouds were gathering. And Samuel, the boy who had once been worth $400, was quietly, relentlessly, writing the bill that would one day come due. The year was 1855, and the air at Riverside Plantation tasted of ash and desperation. Cotton prices had begun their slow bleed southward, while interest on Fairchild's mounting debts gnawed like rats in the granary. The official books, polished by Samuel's meticulous hand, still gleamed with the illusion of prosperity. But beneath the surface, the plantation was rotting from within, a gilded tomb where every column hid a grave. Martha saw the change in Samuel before anyone else. She saw it in the hollows beneath his eyes, in the way his shoulders carried an invisible yoke heavier than any cotton sack. One humid evening in March, as cicadas screamed their endless psalm outside the kitchen door, she pulled him aside while the big house slept. "You're tired, child," she said, voice low as river silt. "Not the tired sleep fixes. The tired that settles in the marrow." Samuel tried to smile. It cracked halfway. "I thought, keeping the real records would feel like fighting. Like I was striking back the only way I knew how. But every day I write his lies in the daylight books, I make them stronger. I make him richer. I make the fraud prettier." Martha didn't soften the truth. "You are helping him lie. Your hand makes his deception look like gospel. Clean numbers. Perfect balance. Investors smile and pour more money in. Creditors extend more credit. All because the books look holy." The words landed like lashes. Samuel stared at the dirt floor, feeling the weight of every false entry he'd ever penned. "So what do I do?" Martha was quiet so long the cicadas seemed to pause. "I don't know if there's anything you can do." "Refuse the books? You'll be sold south before the ink dries. Someone else takes your place, the lies continue, and you lose the only window you've got into this hell. But stop pretending this is resistance. Right now, you're surviving. Recording ain't the same as redeeming. Hidden truth ain't the same as spoken justice." Samuel felt tears burn behind his eyes, tears he hadn't allowed since his mother's wagon disappeared upriver. "Then what would you have me do?" Martha looked past him, toward the darkened big house where Fairchild slept on stolen silk. "Maybe nothing. Maybe you just endure and pray those books matter to someone someday. Or maybe," she met his gaze again, fierce and tender at once. "Maybe an opportunity comes. Someone with real power. Someone who can carry your truth where you can't go. And when that day arrives, you'll have to choose, keep surviving, or risk everything so the numbers finally speak where ears can hear them." Those words lived inside Samuel for months, like embers banked beneath ash. By late 1855, Fairchild's desperation had turned predatory. Eleanor's dowry trust, $25,000 secured by law for her protection, became his secret well.
Samuel overheard the arguments through the study door, Eleanor's voice sharp with betrayal, Fairchild smooth with false promises.
It's only temporary, my dear. An investment that will repay tenfold. You said the same last year. And the year before. Leave my money alone, Robert. The law, however, gave Fairchild dominion over her property. By year's end, $8,000 had vanished from the trust, recorded in the official books as legitimate, interest-bearing loans. In Samuel's hidden pages, they were labeled plainly, theft.
No repayment intended. No consent given. Samuel expanded his secret archive.
No longer content with discrepancies alone, he began cataloging witnesses. Coburn, Savannah trader, bought 3 souls September 1855 for $2,650 cash unreported. Merchant Grayson, Charleston, forged signature on November receipt for non-existent plows. Dockhands Amos and Levi counted only 37 bales loaded January 1856, though books claimed 43.
He built cross-references, an index of sin. 6 ledgers now: financial misrepresentation, unreported sales, trust embezzlement, tax evasion, human testimonies, verifiable sources. Hidden in
floorboards, hollow walls, buried jars. A clandestine scripture of justice, indexed like the books of the prophets.
Yet the question gnawed deeper each night. What good is truth no one ever reads?
By 1857, despair had taken root.
23 years old, Samuel sometimes stared at the ledgers and imagined fire. One match. One moment of release.
Let the names, the dates, the crimes burn. Let him become again only the accountant, useful, silent, safe. But he could never strike the flint. To destroy the ledgers would be to murder memory itself.
To erase David, Ruth, Margaret, Thomas, Eleanor. To let Fairchild's lies stand unchallenged for eternity. So he continued. Not from hope.
From refusal to let evil win by default. Then came May 1858. James Hartford arrived under a sky the color of tarnished silver. Tall, lean, dressed in charcoal broadcloth, he stepped from a modest carriage with the quiet authority of a man who carried warrants in his satchel. Fairchild greeted him with the smile one reserves for tax collectors and vipers. Routine audit, Hartford explained, producing papers stamped by the Charleston Revenue Office.
5 years of records. Full cooperation expected.
Fairchild's jaw flexed, but he ushered the man inside. Samuel watched from the hallway shadows, polishing candlesticks until the silver reflected his own taut face.
An audit. Official eyes on the books he had spent a decade falsifying by day and indicting by night.
For 4 days, Hartford worked in the study like a surgeon.
He requested ledgers, receipts, shipping manifests.
Samuel fetched them, answered questions, explained entries, all while his pulse thundered. Fairchild hovered, offering clarifications laced with charm and half-truths.
Samuel noticed everything.
Hartford's questions zeroed in on cotton yields, asset pledges, investor remittances. His satchel held correspondence from other plantations and one folded newspaper with a partial headline, Abolition Society Demands Federal Probe.
Into fraudulent property claims. Not just taxes. Something deeper.
Something that smelled of northern courts and chains broken by ink rather than blood.
On the 4th afternoon, Hartford pointed to a September 1856 entry. Sale of 3 workers to Coburn. Loss of property value $2,100 recorded. No corresponding income. Where is the cash? Fairchild answered smoothly, a trade. 3 younger hands received. Balanced the books. October entries.
Hartford flipped pages.
Nodded.
But Samuel saw the flicker in the auditor's eyes, the brief, cold glint of disbelief.
Hartford made a note. Underlined something. Knew a lie when he heard one. That night, Samuel could not sleep.
Moonlight sliced through the cracks in the quarter's wall like bars of judgment.
Martha's words returned. Maybe an opportunity will come, and you'll have to decide if survival is still the most important thing. This was the moment.
Past midnight, when the big house creaked only with settling timbers, Samuel knelt beneath his bed. He lifted the loose board. Fingers trembling, he selected Ledger 4 1855 to 1857, comprehensive yet not overwhelming. Wrapped it in burlap to silence the pages. Slipped through darkened corridors like a ghost carrying thunder. He knocked on the guest room door. Barely a sound. Hartford opened it, candle in hand, nightshirt loose on his frame. Surprise sharpened into wariness. "What is it, boy? Does your master need me?" Samuel lifted the bundle. Voice barely above breath. "These are the real numbers, sir. The ones he doesn't want you to see." Silence stretched thin as a razor's edge. Hartford's eyes dropped to the cloth. Rose to Samuel's face. Then he stepped aside. Inside. Now. Samuel entered. The door clicked shut. Hartford lit 2 more candles. Took the ledger. Sat at the small desk. Unwrapped it. He read. Samuel stood rigid, every sense attuned to the sound of turning pages. Minutes bled into 20. 30. Hartford's finger traced columns. His jaw tightened. He flipped back, cross-checked, made notes in furious shorthand. At last he looked up. Voice low, almost reverent. "This is your handwriting. Same as the official books." "Yes, sir. But these entries, they document systematic fraud. Tax evasion. Misrepresentation. Theft from co-owned assets. Theft from his wife's trust. This is," he searched for the word. "A criminal ledger. Written from the inside." "Yes, sir." Hartford studied him anew. Saw not property. Saw a mind. A witness. A man. "You understand the danger you're in right now?" "I do. Why should I trust this isn't fabricated?" "A grievance against your master?" Samuel had prepared for this. Page 15, sir. September 1856. Sale to Coburn. Master told you today it was a trade. But here, full address in Savannah. Exact price, $2,650 cash. Never reported as income. Contact him. His records will match mine. Every entry has something like that, names, dates, places that can be checked. Hartford turned to the page. Read. Nodded slowly. "And there are more?" "6 ledgers total, sir. 10 years. Hundreds of verifiable discrepancies. Financial crimes. Human sales. Witnesses. Everything cross-referenced." Hartford closed the book with deliberate care. "Why?" he asked. "Why risk this?" Samuel had asked himself the same question for a decade. Now the answer came clear as dawn. "Because numbers don't lie, sir. People do. Master Fairchild lies to everyone, investors, banks, his wife, the law. But numbers, they remember. They wait. I kept them because someone needed to. Because I needed to know I was more than $400 on a balance sheet. That my mind mattered. That I could bear witness, even if no one ever listened." Hartford's expression softened only fractionally, but enough. "What happens to you if I use this?" "Best case? I'm sold. Assets liquidated to pay debts. Auction block. Worst case," Samuel let the silence finish the sentence. "And still you brought it?" Samuel thought of Ruth dying without medicine. Of David torn from his mother. Of Thomas ruined. Of Eleanor robbed in her own home. Of every name he had refused to let vanish. "I'm willing, sir. Whatever comes after, at least the truth will be spoken. At least the numbers will finally testify." Hartford regarded him for a long breath.
Then, bring the others tomorrow night. All of them. Tell no one. Not a soul.
Yes, sir. As Samuel turned to leave, Hartford spoke again in quiet, almost gentle.
What you've done here, it matters. Win or lose, it matters. I want you to know that.
For the first time in 10 years, Samuel felt tears fall without shame.
Someone had seen.
Someone had said the words he'd never dared hope to hear.
Thank you, sir. He returned to his room, replaced the remaining ledgers, lay awake until false dawn painted the sky rose and gold.
Fear and fragile hope wrestled in his chest like twin angels.
The next night he brought them all.
They worked until the first roosters challenged the dark.
Hartford read. Questioned. Noted. Marveled. "This is extraordinary," he said at last. "I've exposed frauds before. Never anything this thorough. This meticulous. This brave." Samuel finished the unspoken thought.
Not bad for a slave with no schooling.
Hartford flushed. "I didn't mean." "You did. It's all right. What matters is what you do with it now."
Hartford closed the final ledger. Dawnlight touched the pages like absolution.
"I will use it. I promise you that." Samuel nodded once.
"Then may God have mercy on us both." Outside, the first light spilled over the cotton fields that had known only toil and lies.
Now, perhaps, they would know justice.
The storm had arrived. The study still smelled of the same beeswax and old paper, but the air had changed.
It carried the metallic tang of consequence, the faint rot of illusions finally exposed. July 1858.
The sun rose merciless over Riverside's fields, gilding the cotton bolls that had once been Fairchild's pride and now felt like witnesses to his undoing. James Hartford had left 4 days earlier with 6 leather-bound ledgers cradled like sacred relics. He had promised weeks, perhaps months, of verification. Samuel had nodded, understanding the mathematics of justice moved slower than the whip.
"Act normal," Hartford had said. "Give nothing away. Not a glance. Not a tremor."
Samuel had returned to the mahogany desk each morning, pen in hand, recording Fairchild's latest transactions with the same flawless precision that had once concealed sin and now, temporarily, continued the charade. Every debit, every credit, every false bale of cotton entered felt like swallowing glass.
He wondered, with each stroke of ink, if Fairchild could smell betrayal on him the way overseers once smelled fear. Fairchild, blissfully ignorant, crowed at dinner that night.
Samuel, serving silently, heard every word drift through the open doorway like poison smoke.
That Hartford found nothing of substance, Fairchild boasted to Eleanor. A few trifling underreported bushels. A small fine. We'll manage. The books are impeccable.
Eleanor's voice was thin, brittle.
You mean Samuel's books are impeccable? Fairchild laughed, a sound without joy. Exactly. My accountant. Best investment I ever made. Samuel poured wine with steady hands.
Inside, something ancient and righteous uncoiled. The numbers were already marching toward their appointment with truth. Martha saw the change in him every evening in the kitchen shadows.
She never asked outright, but one night she simply said, "You gave them up, didn't you?" He met her eyes. Nodded once.
She pulled him close, her arms fierce and trembling.
"Braver than your mama ever got the chance to be. I'm proud, child. Terrified for you, but proud." "I'm scared too," he whispered. "Good," she said. "Means you still know what's at stake."
The warrant arrived 6 weeks later, not to Fairchild, but carried by 3 federal marshals riding up the Oakline Drive on a blistering July morning.
Hartford walked beside them, expression calm as stone.
Behind came bank officers and a lawyer representing defrauded investors, their faces carved from grim satisfaction. Samuel was mid-entry, recording a phantom shipment of 42 bales, when the front hall erupted.
Shouts. Eleanor's sharp cry. Fairchild's voice rising in disbelief, then fury.
The study door burst open. Fairchild stormed in first, face crimson, eyes wild. Hartford and two marshals followed. The master's gaze locked on Samuel like a pistol sight. You. The word was venom. My bookkeeper. My accountant. I taught you. I trusted you. Samuel rose slowly. For the first time in 17 years, he met Fairchild's eyes without lowering his head. You taught me to keep accurate records, sir, he said quietly. That's exactly what I did. Fairchild lunged. A marshal caught his arm, iron cuffs clinking like judgment bells. Mr. Fairchild, Hartford said, voice level as a surveyor's line, you are under federal arrest for fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and misuse of collateral assets. The evidence is overwhelming. Lies. Fairchild roared. A slave's word means nothing. The evidence isn't his word, Hartford replied. It's 10 years of ledgers, his hidden ledgers, verified by 17 independent witnesses, bank records, shipping manifests, merchant receipts from Savannah to Charleston. Your official books are fiction, sir. We can prove it. The color drained from Fairchild's face as realization struck like a guillotine. He looked around the room, at the desk where Samuel had sat for a decade, at the shelves that had once valued at $400 now standing as the instrument of his ruin. They led him away in irons. Samuel watched from the window as Fairchild was loaded into a wagon, still shouting denials that echoed across the yard like the last cries of a dying king. Eleanor followed in her carriage, already summoning lawyers. The plantation fell silent, as though the land itself held its breath. Hartford remained with a court trustee named Peters. Assets frozen. Books impounded. Samuel ordered to assist in the inventory, his knowledge too valuable to discard. For weeks he worked openly with investigators, explaining entries, pointing out phantoms, matching hidden truths to official lies. His ledgers lay spread across the desk beside the falsified ones, twin testaments, one of deception, one of redemption. Yet freedom remained a mirage. 3 days after the arrest, Hartford delivered the news in the quiet study. The trial will take months. Fairchild will fight. But he will lose. When he does, the estate liquidates. Creditors take everything, including you. Samuel had known. Still, the words landed heavy. I argued for your manumission as reward for cooperation, Hartford continued. The court refused. You're worth too much. Assessed at $1,800, possibly more at auction. $1,800. More than 4 times his original price. A bitter compliment. Hartford leaned forward. I'm contacting abolition societies in the North. Telling your story. Raising funds to buy your freedom before the gavel falls. Samuel stared at the man who had once been a stranger. You'd do that? You exposed one of the largest frauds this state has seen. You did it knowing the cost. Yes, Samuel. I would. Months crawled. Hartford wrote letters. Northern papers ran the story, the accountant, an enslaved man who used mathematics as a weapon against tyranny. Donations trickled in, $5, $10, $20. By September 1858 the fund reached $340. Still far short. Fairchild's trial opened in October. 7 weeks of testimony. Samuel was called, not to speak of crimes he had witnessed, enslaved testimony inadmissible against whites, but to confirm the ledgers were his handiwork. That was enough. The documents themselves spoke. Witnesses corroborated. Coburn testified to secret sales. Merchants admitted forged receipts. Banks revealed phantom collateral. November 28, 1858, guilty on 17 counts. 4 years in federal prison. $73,000 in restitution. Victory. But victory tasted of ash. Liquidation loomed. Auction set for March 3, 1859. Samuel worked on under Peters, keeping truthful books for the first time in his life. Martha tried to comfort him. Maybe bringing him down was enough, she said one night. It doesn't feel like enough, he answered.
On March 1st, Hartford arrived breathless, eyes alight. I have a buyer, he announced to Peters. Massachusetts Abolition Society. Offering $2,200 above assessment with immediate manumission upon transfer. Peters hesitated. Examined drafts. Consulted law. Nodded. Accepted. Sale tomorrow.
Manumission papers filed directly.
Samuel stood motionless. Freedom not promised, not hoped for, but purchased. Real. March 2, 1859. He walked out of Riverside carrying a small sack and crisp papers declaring him free.
Martha wept openly, holding him like a mother sending her only son into the world. Go live free enough for both of us, she whispered.
Tell them what happened here. Make those numbers mean something. He left with Hartford. Shipped to Boston. First sight of open sea. First breath as a man no one owned.
In Boston, the Abolition Society gave him work managing their accounts.
Honest ledgers at last.
In 1860 he began speaking, ledgers in hand, showing how slavery ran on fraud even by its own arithmetic.
Numbers don't lie, he told rapt audiences. But they hide stories. Behind every figure is a person. That's what must be remembered. War came in 61.
Samuel aided the Union supply chains, logistics, disrupting Confederate economics with the same precision he once used to conceal them.
He married Grace in 1863. 3 children. All taught to read, write, calculate, tools no master could ever take away.
After Appomattox, he taught freed people accounting, literacy, economic self-reliance.
Tracked down scattered families from his old ledgers. Reconnected a few. Gave them back names and kin.
Fairchild served 3 years, emerged broken. Died alone in 1871, still blaming everyone but himself. Eleanor recovered her trust, remarried better. Riverside burned in 1879, some said by former bondsmen who wanted no monument to their suffering left standing. Samuel's ledgers survived.
Donated to archives. Studied by scholars. Exhibited. Digitized.
They remain 6 volumes of quiet devastation, proof that one man's patient witness can outlast empires.
He lived to 63. Died in Boston, 1897. Memoir published 1882, The Accountant's Ledger, A Slave's Mathematical Resistance.
On his deathbed, surrounded by family, he asked one thing: keep the ledgers safe.
Let them speak when memory fails. They did. And they still do. Because numbers don't lie. But behind every number is a soul. Samuel remembered the souls.
And in remembering, he set truth free.